Thanks, Tom. That's certainly a very impressive range of work, and some of the results are really fascinating. So we'll be taking questions and so on at the end. So really, I've got a few, but really fantastic work. And it's so important to actually see the results of the work and the implementation, which you're clearly getting to grips with. Okay, so I'm Sri Kalidindi, because I'm chair. I'll introduce myself just briefly. I'm a consultant psychiatrist at SLAM. I still work clinically, and I also lead the mental health rehabilitation national work stream at NHS England and Improvement. And I have other roles as well, but really today I'm going to speak to you with the hat of somebody who has worked in mental health and really understands the impact of physical health, physical activity and sport on the lives of our whole population, and thinking from somebody who supports population health. Okay, so when I was asked to give this talk, Richard, who's the director, said to me, "Sri, can you not put up lots of boring slides with PowerPoints, with little kind of bullet points? Can you make it interesting, and can you make it really inspirational?" I thought, wow, for a Tuesday morning, that's quite a big ask. But anyway, I've done a bit of a mixture, so let's see what your thoughts are at the end of this. So I've titled this Mental Wealth, because if we think about that, mental wealth, it is about thinking about our mental health in respect of the whole kind of way we think about, I guess, financial health, or perhaps we ought to. If we think about being preventative, thinking about how we make sure we have got enough of a cushion to keep us going. If we think about how we invest in our mental health, our mental wealth on a regular basis, both for now, but for the future. So a lot of what we do in terms of our kind of lifestyle factors and so on, and our kind of daily physical activity, is something that we might enjoy now, but really we're also storing up and building up that kind of investment for the future to live those long, healthy lives. I'm going to talk a little bit about why mental illness is on the rise, talking about physical activity, the importance of it, and also what can we do. And I think we've already heard some of the fantastic work that's going on about tackling these issues. So why is mental illness on the rise? The WHO said that there's been they found the 13% rise in mental health conditions and substance disorders in the last decade. And of course that's increased further, particularly with COVID-19. And the other really startling fact, I don't know how many of you knew this, but 20% of the world's children and adolescents have a mental health condition. Did you realise it was that many? It's significant, and it's worrying. It means we really need to be doing something about this. And young people is the second leading cause of their death. And we know the stats in this country for men of that sort of younger working age group of men who have the highest rate of suicides. It's the highest cause of death for that group, that cohort. And we also know that it costs a lot of money to the whole, our whole resourcing, health, social care, so many different aspects of life, as well as obviously the challenges that we have, both for the individual, their families, and wider community. However, we only spend on a global level about 2% of health expenditure. So that's really isn't in keeping at all with the level of the need and the burden. So we've got a lot of work to do there. We have been quite lucky in the UK in some respects, in the sense that we've had money coming through various mental health initiatives, including being included in the long-term plan. Of course, that sort of went a little bit sideways with COVID-19, and still we're not kind of caught up, as many of you will know, with the treatment gap. The people who need treatment, how much availability we've actually got to treat people. So if we think about how we can tackle this, we really have to take this sort of very kind of broad view and this kind of multi-pronged way of dealing with it. the individual, what do they do, how do we support them, how do we think about it at community level, and some of the work that others are doing here and we'll speak about is absolutely that, and also at population level. So we now have our integrated care systems and such an opportunity to think about, exactly what are the needs of that kind of cohort, that population, and really to do more than we do at the moment in prevention, turning off that tap of people going up the pathway and developing mental health and physical health conditions. Of course, that's right now where we spend most of our money in the NHS. The majority goes on treating people once they're already unwell, very little on prevention, and that absolutely needs to change. And that's something that we absolutely need to do within our ICSs if we're going to make real kind of inroads into the health of our population. So I'm not going to dwell too much on the evidence around regular physical activity and its links to improved mental health, because I think we know that people have talked about it a lot of publications about it, and even the World Health Organization recognises the importance of that. So how does it do it? When we exercise, we release endorphins. That sort of improves our mood. It reduces our stress hormones. So those things together really help us with our mental health. And of course, when we're being physically active, often we may be playing sports with others, we may be walking with others. There's that sort of social element, that community element. And I'll talk a little bit about how important that is to health, happiness, and longevity in a minute. So one of the things I wanted to talk about was what we do in the kind of mental health system. There's a secondary mental health services around thinking about getting people active and into that sort of whole aspect of physical health and activity. I just wanted to flag a couple of the initiatives that I think are really fantastic and had some really positive impact on people and populations. So one of them is linking up with local sports groups. So you can see the picture there, that's Crystal Palace football ground, which is down the road from me. And they have a fantastic scheme where for years now they've been working with people who are in mental health services, and they offer their space to come and train. They have some of their coaches working with this group of people, and of course loads of people absolutely love football. They really connect with it, so that's fantastic, isn't it? We talked about motivation, we talked about having to enjoy something if it's going to be sustainable, so it kind of has all those ingredients and that sociability. And I'll just tell you a story of one person, Frank, who grew up in South London on an estate. He had a happy, supportive family. He fell in with the wrong crowd, though. He started using cannabis fairly early on, and just in his teenage years started developing psychotic symptoms, and in fact became schizophrenic. He had diagnosed schizophrenia, and the following, several years after that, he was in and out of mental health hospitals, usually under a section, police coming around, taking him off to hospital. Really, really unpleasant for him, his family, and if you think about the resources that takes as well, not the best way to do things. So after a while, he had a really good support worker who did all that groundwork that we know is crucial of engaging with people and just kind of building that trust and building that relationship in order that they can then think about what else might be possible for them. And so he then was really interested in heading off to this group, and eventually his support worker was able to get Frank to go, even though he had a lot of anxiety about it, didn't know what he could wear. He was overweight at this point, really unfit, had developed already at a young age high blood pressure and was heading towards diabetes, just in his at this point late 20s. And he went along, and after he enjoyed it. After the first couple of sessions, he started to, look much smarter, take care of his appearance when he was going. he started to think about the rest of his health, because actually the whole group were like that. What are you eating? Are you staying hydrated? This sort of thing, because actually it started to be meaningful in that context of his peers, and we know it's so crucial. Again, who you hang out with, really, really important, has a massive impact on our levels of health and well-being. And over time, his self-confidence improved, and he got to the point where he is now in work. So he's in part-time paid work. He also is a peer support worker and brings other people along to the group and helps them on this journey. So it's been really transformational for him. He hasn't gone back to hospital since, at all. And he has lost weight. He's a healthy weight. He doesn't smoke anymore. So it's really been transformative. So that power of sport and bringing people in. I've got a picture of an allotment. That's another very kind of positive thing that people with mental health conditions are supported to get along to. And not only is there that sociability, it's that thing of being in nature. It's growing your own food, being able to take healthy food, cook it. So, these kind of, and the activity, of digging, it burns a lot of calories, builds your strength, helps your balance. So it's about how we really think, creatively, and meet people where they are, support them in the things that they're interested in, not sort of create other things that we think are good for them. Okay. So I don't know how many of you have watched this program. Anyone seen it? Yeah, awesome. Yeah, I agree. Okay. So the blue zones, really interestingly, so I think most of you know about this, places around the world where people, they have a outsized number of people who live to 100 or more. Okay. And so Dan, I forget his surname, went out. He's been studying this for years, as have others. It's on Netflix, by the way. If you haven't seen it, I would give it a watch. I don't have shares. But it's really fascinating, because he looks at about 5 different populations around the world, Japan, Greece, even in the US, really interesting, and a couple of other countries as well, Italy. And he finds what the ingredients are. And he finds that connection makes up about 50% of the contribution towards longevity, living to over 100. And that is backed up by other studies. For example, there's a Harvard study which followed Harvard graduates all the way through for about 70 years. Same thing, it was social connection that led to people living happier, longer lives. And as part of that, many of them have built in physical activity as well. Things called moai, I'm pronouncing that properly, but a circle of friends who keep each other active, who support one another socially, and so on. And another thing that he found was this, obviously physical activity was a really essential part, as another kind of cornerstone alongside the connection. And there was a few things he found. Doing things by hand, so not always doing everything, using machines to do everything, not always driving your car, so kind of doing things manually made a massive impact. Because you're doing those things regularly. You're not just going to the gym once and that's it for the day. And I don't know how many of you heard of the phrase, sitting is the new smoking. Heard that? Yeah. So even if you go to the gym for an hour a day, if you're sitting, working, or whatever else for 8 hours, actually that you've sort of nullified almost your gym going. Okay. So that thing of getting up and being a little bit active during your day, every hour or so, is really key. Okay, and walking and gardening are the other things that he talks about. And amazingly, he's recreated this back in the States. And it's really interesting to hear some of all the people who are speaking today, so many of you, some of the things that you're going to be talking about in terms of the 20-minute city, in terms of the biking, different elements that you're all doing, where we're kind of trying to recreate that, aren't we, in sort of local populations. Okay. So who recognises these people? Yeah. What do you think I'm going to say is a connecting factor? Any thoughts? Sorry? Started young, yeah. Well, actually, they've all had mental illness. Every single one of them. And these are kind of the goats, aren't they? They really are, you know, the greatest of all time in their chosen sports. All of them. Depression, anxiety, they've taken time off as a result of it. Many of you will remember Simone Biles in the Olympics in 2021 coming out all together. She said she was anxious, she was getting panic attacks. And you imagine doing that in the middle of a, you know, spinning through the air. She just said it wasn't safe. She had to stop. There was a lot of criticism. There was some support, but a lot of criticism. And now she's come back and she's won her 8th, just recently, a couple of weeks ago, her 8th US national championship, and she's broken all records. I think the last time that happened was it was 100 years ago, in the 1930s. So there's something there as well about, you know, resilience and learning from people who are right at the top of their game, and they're able to manage to come back out of the depression, anxiety. And I think it's a real inspiration to others as well. And we should talk more about people who openly share these issues and come out the other end. I was going to talk about hard-to-reach groups. I had a fantastic video, which I just couldn't find, and it was really of a group of Bengali women who were really inactive, pretty isolated, and there's some really great evidence about what you can do, what kind of exercises you can do to stop becoming really frail, to stop having falls, because we know those are things as we get older really cause a lot of problems to the individual and also to our health services. If we think about, you know, the ambulance people going down, picking up people off the floor all the time. Some of you will have seen that TV programme. And, you know, as people get frailer, it means that they need more and more care and support. They may need to go to care homes. It links all, of course, then with reduced physical activity. It links in with increased rates of dementia. So it's a really crucial thing, you know, not to get frail, actually. And there are ways to do that. There are exercises we can do to reduce that risk. But they're pretty boring. Okay. There's a sequence that, you know, these fantastic physios and so on are put together, but they're pretty boring and nobody was doing them. So what they did was this one very ingenious man put them to music, and it was a little dance routine. It was really fun. It was interesting to do, and there was somebody then, one of the charity members who was starting this particular group, went around and got these women to come together and dance regularly. And they all became so much, obviously they tracked them so much stronger, more sociable. Their mood elevated because of this, both the exercise and the sociability of it. And their confidence grew, and some of them then started to do other things with their lives that they would never have thought of. You know, perhaps going into work, perhaps, you know, helping at their local school, different things that made them more confident and actually being able to give back more to the society as well. And when I met them, they were dancing. Have any of you been to the Royal Institute? Yes, okay. It's a massive auditorium. If you think this is big, it's about 4 or 5 times the size of this. And you're sitting right at the front in a little circle. That's where they were. And they were all dancing to this music in front of Amanda Pritchard, the head of the NHS, and all sorts of people were there. And it was just fantastic to see, because they would never have done that. So without that kind of outreach program and sort of going to meet them where they are and making the exercise something that's interesting and exciting to do. So their rates of depression, anxiety really dropped as well. That was a big issue for that population too. So I'm really sorry I don't have the dancing. I couldn't find it on my little phone video. And then the last thing I thought, just to leave you with, I don't know how I play this. I don't know if you play it. Oh, here we go. So let's stop it there. So I'm leaving Simone to give you the inspiration as well for the rest of your day, okay? So really fantastic group of people, and please take advantage of today. Okay, thank you.